Hi, I'm TW Wright, and on this episode of Whiskey Blind, I'm going to do a blind tasting of a peated Scottish single malt. Now, knowing I was going to do a peated whiskey tonight, I decided to pair it with cheese, some cookies, and of course my cigar. So let's get started. All right, so we go ahead and pour a little of this in the glass. Now, I always like to start with not a whole lot of whiskey at first because I'm going to add a lot of water to it. And then I'm going to start adding more and more whiskey back into it to get the ABV, the alcohol level, back to where you would normally want to drink it. So, let's see what we got here. Just give it a smell where it is. Definitely got some peat. Wonderful smell, of course. There's peated single malts. It's not overly strong, not in your face, but we'll see how it opens up with some water. So before I taste it, I'm going to add some water to it. Now, what I like to do with a whiskey, whenever I'm doing tasting, is I like to add water. I think of it like I'm zeroing a rifle. You get a new rifle, the first thing you want to do is take it down to battle site 0. So I'm going to add more water in here than I really need, than I would normally want to drink this whiskey. I'm going to bring it down to below a drinkable alcohol level, and then I'm going to take some smells, and because that really opens things up and you can smell things in there, some really delicate things. And then I'm going to start adding more whiskey in and taking sips. Let's get a lot of water in there. Let's see. And I'll keep bringing it back up, and that's sort of like zeroing the rifle until I get it just where I want it, where I like to have it when I drink a whiskey. And that changes from one whiskey to the next. It changes from one mood to the next, how I feel that particular moment. But we'll start with a low alcohol level here. Get some nice grassy notes, almost like dry straw. Of course, the smoky peatiness. It's kind of a fresh air, like a straw meadow. Not that pungent, sweet smell like hay, but like dry straw. I'm gonna take a little sip, even though I know it's gonna be a little too watered down. Sweet, nice, nothing overly impressive, but again, I got too much water in it right now. So we'll go ahead and start our zeroing process here. I'm going to just add a little bit more whiskey at a time. I've got less than maybe an ounce in here total with the whiskey and the water together. I'm going to add maybe a half a teaspoon of water. I'm going to keep the top on this because the smell of that is coming out really strong. Whereas this is a little bit more subdued, a little more delicate because I have the water in there. Already getting a little bit more of the iodine in there. This is delicious. Sweet notes, very outdoorsy, springtime, aromatic, straw in the field with the grassy notes. At this point, light peat, light iodine. Again, I'm going to add a little more whiskey in there. Continue tightening up the shot group here on my zeroing the whiskey. Sweeter. It's not getting more intense, which is nice. This whiskey I might be able to get it back up to bottle strength. I'm not sure what this one is. I like to add water to almost every whiskey I drink. But sometimes my second glass or so, I'll just drink it without, putting more than a few drops in. Maltiness is coming through, a little bit of those cereal notes. Definitely getting some of that barley grain notes in there, which is very nice. I feel like I'm getting some of the sweet, fruity notes usually associated with the fermentation and the yeast process. You usually don't get that much of those notes in a single malt because usually they're aged long enough where those notes have kind of dissipated in the barrel. We'll see. Jury's still out on that. But because I'm getting those, I think I'm getting a little bit of that right now. It makes me think that this whiskey isn't too old. It's probably not a very old whiskey. Being put in a second used barrel, 6 years maybe, 8 at the most. We'll see. Let me get it back up to full strength, and I'll go with that again. Okay, so, and the reason I like to do these tastings blind is whenever we're drinking a whiskey, and this whiskey was chosen out of a possible 9 different whiskeys that I know of, and I'm familiar with all of them, but I don't know which one this one is. But I like to taste them blind, and I'm not trying to guess which one it is. When I do this, actually, I hope that it doesn't become immediately apparent which whiskey it is, and sometimes it does. Because to be able to taste a whiskey and not be influenced, and not be biased by the label, we call it a blind tasting, but it's taking the blinders off because you're not blinded by the bias of the label. So I really like to do things like this whenever I can, to taste it blind, to give myself a chance to appreciate the whiskey for what it is, not feel obligated to like it because everybody else does, or because it's expensive, or find that the nuances that are written on the back of the label. Just give yourself the opportunity to really enjoy it for what it is. Continues to develop. The maltiness is coming out even more, and the iodine a little bit more. It's really nice. It's not getting really strong, which makes me think that it's not bottled. It's not a cask strength. I'm just going to go ahead in here and fill up my glass now. Of course, we still have some water in there from the original pour, because I like to have a little water in there with it. Much closer to where I like to drink it now. This is a tasty whiskey. Really long finish. All the Islas have a finish that goes on forever. So I'm going to continue to sip this and enjoy this. When we come back, I'm going to add a few things to pair to it, and we'll see how those flavors affect this flavor. All right, so I've been sipping this one, and this is a really nice whiskey. I love peated Scotch single malts. I love Scotch blends. I love pretty much all Scotch whiskey, and this is a real treat. So whenever I taste a whiskey, and whenever I talk about a whiskey and share it with other people, I like to not just taste it in the glass, as we've been doing for the last few minutes, and really kind of honing in on the whiskey itself, but I like to taste it alongside of other things. We don't drink whiskey just by itself, or I don't. I drink it with friends. I drink it with, have it with snacks, with a cigar, and that's how I like to experience it, even when we're doing, reviews of sorts. So, one of my favorite things to have with a strong peated taste of an Islay whiskey, and I'm saying Islay. This might not be an Islay whiskey. Nowadays there's peated whiskeys from all over Scotland, so I probably need to saying Islay. But knowing this was going to be a peated whiskey, one of my favorite things to have with a peated single malt is a strong cheese. So I have in here, oh gosh. That is a pungent, strong, wonderful, aged Stilton cheese. I mean, that just hit me full force. Under these lights, it's been warming up under that glass bowl, and man, it's just filled the room. Just tasting the whiskey with the smell of this cheese has improved things already. So one of my favorite things, as I was saying, with a peated whiskey is a strong cheese. Lots of different types of cheese. Tonight I have a Stilton Blue. One of the things I like about this kind of cheese with this kind of whiskey is there's a brininess that often is detected in this kind of cheeses that kind of goes along with the brininess in the whiskey with most of the peated whiskeys. I've talked before about how I like to pair things either together or completely apart. And this one, I'm thinking the strength of this cheese, the brininess, the pungent, in your face flavors, that greasy mouth coating texture is going to work perfectly with this whiskey. And they're going to, move together on the ice like that figure skating couple that I always envisioned with a pairing like this. So we'll get started and see if everything I'm thinking is going to come out as good as I'm hoping. Now they got some crackers here for me, but I've always felt that they haven't invented a cracker yet that's good enough for a good cheese. So I just eat mine by itself. Strong, deep. The Stiltons are the goat blue cheese. I think I'm right. I'm no cheese expert, but I'm pretty sure that they are a goat cheese. Has that sort of flavor that goes along with that, plus the brininess. I want to let a little bit of that flavor really settle into my tongue before I put the whiskey in there with it. Nice texture. Already just smelling the whiskey with the cheese in my mouth. The sweetness of this whiskey and the creaminess of the cheese just kind of work together. Man, I'm gonna have to have some more and think about this. You got to take your time with something like this. The strength of the pungent, aromatic, creamy flavor of this cheese has made the whiskey taste sweeter. The peatiness, the smoke is still there. The finish, it's almost like the texture of the cheese has extended the flavors of the finish even further back down my throat as it lingers on. This is a great pairing. Always people ask me about pairings. If they say that they're doing a Scotch, I'm saying you got to do a cheese. You got to do some cheeses. If they're saying they're going to do a peated Scotch, you got to do a really dark, pungent, strong blue. And there's others that you could pair with it also. But this, you can't go wrong with this. So I'm gonna have a little time with this. Enjoy this for a little bit. We'll come back in a few minutes. We'll add the next thing. All right, I feel a little more whiskey in here. Tell you what, I might need a bigger sample tonight. This is going down nicely. I've been snacking on this cheese. Both cheese and whiskey have continued to develop together with these flavors. The cheese, it's getting more pungent, more stinky as I go. The whiskey is continuing to develop a sweetness along with the cheese. I'm getting more of the iodine brininess working together with these two. It's great. I'm going to go ahead and add to this pairing, turn it into a grouping here. The next thing that I like to do with a whiskey is a nice cigar. Now, you may have heard people say things like, you know, who wants to have a smelly cigar with a nice cheese? Me, that's who. I do, because that's how I like to have it. So I enjoy a cigar with my whiskey. I think a cigar, the flavors of a cigar, tonight I'm going to have a Monte Cristo, a really nice, full-bodied, earthy but mild cigar. And the flavors of that the strength, the astringent flavors of that smoke just bring out even more of the better qualities of a whiskey like this. All right, I'm excited to taste these together. You know the greatest thing about a cigar? The second you like it, the second you light it, it just slows time down. Everything goes a little slower and it's a little better. First puffs of the cigar, already blending with that greasy, cheesy flavor with the whiskey and the peat smoke that's finishing in my tongue. Already, before I've even taken a sip of whiskey with it, tastes great. More dynamics of sweetness. I'm getting more brown sugar now. Some more flowery sweetness. The grassiness that I tasted strong before is kind of, I don't get that as much. It's kind of, the other flavors have built up. Even the cheese becomes more mild in the presence of a strong cigar. And this, again, this isn't a really strong cigar. Every cigar has strength to it. And compared to a nice cheese. Now I'm getting the fruitiness. The cigar with the cheese is now bringing out the fruitiness that I couldn't get in this whiskey earlier. Some juice, fruit juice flavors. Like cherry juice. Almost some notes of cola. And that's what's so great about doing a grouping like this. You know, I always recommend don't just drink a whiskey by itself. Pair it with something. There's a lot of immense amount of dynamics that come out when you do a nice pairing. Now you're talking about three things together. So many dynamics and different flavors, and we're just stacking one flavor on the next and one flavor on the next, and it just develops more and more of a synergy between the different flavors. And the sum of these flavors are more than any you know any of them by themselves or added together when you come together. However that analogy goes. Look, I'm gonna spend some time with this. This is fantastic. We come back. We got one more thing to add. So, while we're gone, we brought out the whiskey. And as you can see, we've got the Port Charlotte Islay Barley whiskey. This is a fantastic, and I got to tell you, and I know I'm not supposed to do this, I was thinking it was the Port Charlotte. I knew when I tasted it, there's a way that the Bruichladdich presents with their peat that's not overly smoky. Very earthy, very full, has a strong presence, but it doesn't present super smoky like a Lafroig or even like Volin. Wonderful, and I love the Islay Barley version as opposed to their Scottish barley. Just a little bit more of a robust grain. When you taste them side by side, you can really get the nuances in the grain. Wonderful whiskey, really enjoying it. Fantastic choice for this whole pairing. So, I've been sipping, I've been smoking my cigar. Enjoying this cheese. And we're going to add one more thing. I could need something else. This is perfect as it is. One of the things that I always love to have with a Scotch, all the Scotches, I think it goes especially well with Lowlands and Highlands, but is shortbread cookies. And I love the simplicity of this snack. I mean, it's oats, sugar, and enough butter to kill you. And we've had these, you know, countless numbers of whiskey tastings. And I've always noticed over the years how this snack, like so many others, can really bring out other nuances in a whiskey and really help to kind of focus in on different flavors that you might not taste in a whiskey if it wasn't paired with this. Right away, the butteriness, you know, of course with this cheese, completely mouth-filling, completely just coats your palate. The grain notes in the cookie and the grain notes in the whiskey work together. Wonderful texture. The cookies, the shortbread is bringing out more of the iodine. When I first take a sip of this whiskey, you get a lot of peat smoke, you get a lot of iodine, as you would with any Islay whiskey. And as we added the cheese and the cigar, those flavors sort of mellow a little bit, and you can bring in the fruitness that we discerned, some of the fruit juice in the berry, some of the more grain notes, and now it's like it's the presence of the iodine and the smoke have come back again with this cookie. And this really is a perfect sweet snack for a whiskey. It's not, doesn't have all kinds of frills to it. It's very basic, very simple, and just another layer of flavors that we're adding on top of this grouping. Mm. So many dynamic flavors working together. Mm. The grain in the cookie, I feel, has sort of downplayed the grain notes in the whiskey, and I feel like I could taste the barrel a little bit more, that second used barrel. It's bringing out some of the wood notes. That's the wonderful thing about these pairings. A lot of people are like, well, you're gonna cover up the flavor of the whiskey if you eat cookies with it. No, you're gonna uncover flavors of the whiskey when you pair it with the right cookies. Mm. So this is a fantastic grouping. One of my favorite ways to do things with a good Scottish peated whiskey. A strong cheese, in this case, this Stilton. These cookies are fantastic. A nice, mild, earthy cigar. A wonderful experience. They all go together so well. I'm going to spend some time sipping this, enjoying these, finishing off these cigars and these cookies. This is a great experience. I hope you try your own pairings, your own groupings with your whiskey. Try a blind tasting. Have a friend or have somebody else take a bottle from your collection. Don't try to guess what it is. That's not the point. Just allow yourself to enjoy the whiskey without trying to make your mind mold into the bias of what other people say about it. Let yourself develop your own opinion of it. I have a great time doing this. This is how I enjoy doing it. I hope you enjoy it too. Cheers, WBSE. Mm. Two cookies? Who did the snacks? Two cookies. You better go get me some damn cookies. You know I'm going to eat more than two cookies.